In most neighborhoods, the biggest drama is a missing Amazon package, or whose dog left a surprise on whose lawn. But in Savannah Pines, something darker was growing buried beneath manicured hedges and HOA newsletters. They say, power reveals who you really are. For one woman, it became an obsession, and for one family, a $150 parking fine would uncover a trail of corruption, intimidation, and secrets too big to stay hidden. This isn't just a story about a community divided. It's about what happens when people stop being afraid and start fighting back. Mariah Ellis wasn't the kind of person who stirred trouble. A soft-spoken law professor turned widow, she lived with her teenage son Clayton in a cozy colonial-style home at the edge of Savannah Pines, a picturesque suburban community nestled just outside Asheville, North Carolina. Here, the hedges were trimmed within regulation height, the porch lights matched by color code, and the sidewalks stayed squeaky clean, all thanks, or perhaps no thanks, to the Homeowners Association. At the head of this HOA sat Judith Crowley. Judith was a woman with posture so upright it looked painful heels that clicked like gavel strikes, and a smile that made neighbors feel guilty for existing. Since being elected HOA President 3 months earlier, she had turned Savannah Pines into something closer to a gated fiefdom than a neighborhood. Fines flowed like water. A pink notice for unapproved wind chimes here, a $50 citation for holiday lights overstaying their welcome there. Mariah had stayed under the radar until Clayton's 16th birthday. They'd held a quiet get-together. A few family members, some of Clayton's friends from school, a couple parked cars on the driveway, and a banner that read, "Sweet 16 Kiddo," in red script. No loud music. No late-night chaos. Just memories. The next morning, Mariah found the first pink slip. Violation exceeded maximum number of driveway vehicles. Fine, $175. She blinked at the paper. Was this a joke? She reread the violation twice before stepping inside and calling Clayton down. "Mom," he asked, rubbing sleep from his eyes. "What's wrong?" "This," she said, holding up the notice like it was radioactive. "We got fined for your birthday." "You're kidding." I wish Clayton took the paper and read it aloud. Section 12(3). No more than 2 non-resident vehicles may occupy a private driveway during non-daylight hours. Non-compliance may result in penalties. He looked up. "We had 4 cars for like 6 hours. I know." She exhaled through her nose. "This is ridiculous. Should we pay it?" "I'm going to talk to the board first." That afternoon, Mariah attended the HOA meeting. She arrived early, hoping to speak calmly with Judith. Before the crowd filtered in, Judith stood at the front, clipboard in hand. Hair pulled tight into a bun that could cut glass. Mariah approached. "Excuse me, Judith." Judith didn't look up. "Yes, I'm here about the citation we received." "Oh," Judith said, still scanning her clipboard. "Maple Lane, correct. Yes, the driveway. Fine. Completely valid." Judith's smile tightened. "It's in the guidelines. It was a birthday party for my son. Just family. No street parking, no noise complaints. No." "The rules don't make exceptions for birthdays, Mrs. Ellis. Otherwise, everyone would abuse the system. I've lived here 6 years. We've never had a single violation." Judith finally looked up. "Then I'd suggest you keep it that way." The conversation ended there. Back home, Mariah stood in her kitchen, stewing in quiet frustration. Her legal instincts kicked in. This wasn't about rules. It was about control. She sat at the dining room table and pulled out the HOA handbook. She flipped through its pages like she used to examine evidence in courtrooms. Precise, methodical, and always 2 steps ahead. Somewhere around page 37 she found Section 12(3). It was there, yes, but the language was vague and, oddly, no clause about exemptions for special occasions. She started reading deeper. And then she started to notice something else. Inconsistencies. Pages referenced in the table of contents that didn't exist. Policies without revision dates. Amendments with no sign-off. It was sloppy. Worse, it was potentially invalid. The next morning, 2 more citations appeared. One for lawn height exceeding 3 inches, another for trash bin visibility. Mariah checked her yard. Her grass was trim. Her trash bins were behind the fence. It felt personal now. When she checked the neighborhood Facebook group, she wasn't alone. Got fined $50 for a garden gnome. Really? Mrs. Chavez, my mailbox color isn't HOA approved. Been here 8 years. Mr. Rao, Judith just made my daughter cry because our porch lights were too bright. Anonymous Clayton scrolled through the comments. They're scared, he said, but nobody's doing anything. Mariah looked at her son, her heart tightening with a quiet resolve. She had spent years teaching students about justice, due process, and standing up to abuse of power. It was time she practiced what she preached. She opened her laptop and began drafting a formal request for financial records and HOA board meeting transcripts. Then she picked up her phone and called a contact from her law school days, now a county compliance officer. Meanwhile, Clayton had a plan of his own. He posted a short video online, a shot of the pink slip on their windshield, a shot of the driveway with no cars in sight, and a question in bold text. How far can your HOA go before it becomes a dictatorship? By sundown, it had over 40,000 views, and Judith had no idea what storm was coming. It didn't take long for things to spiral. The video Clayton posted, just a casual clip with a snarky caption, hit something raw. Overnight, it spread like wildfire. Comments poured in from strangers, neighbors, even people from other states, sharing horror stories about their own tyrannical HOAs. One user wrote, "Judith sounds like she's building her own dictatorship." Another said, "We need more people like your mom standing up to this nonsense." Mariah wasn't one for online drama, but this was different. By Thursday, the mayor's office had issued a vague statement reminding HOAs to respect residents' rights. Local news picked it up, calling it a case study in HOA overreach. Judith, on the other hand, acted like nothing had changed. If anything, she doubled down. That week, Savannah Pines received a blizzard of pink slips. Homes that had never seen a single violation suddenly had 2, 3, even 4. One woman got fined for an American flag mounted at the wrong angle. A retired couple was written up for unauthorized decorative rocks. It was like living under siege. But Mariah had already moved from defense to offense. She'd filed a formal challenge against the HOA's citations, demanding proof of inspection, documented board approval, and photographic evidence for each fine. Most weren't backed by anything, just a line in a ledger and Judith's signature. And then came the breakthrough. Mariah received a manila envelope in her mailbox, no return address. Inside were photocopies of financial documents, expense reports, reimbursement forms, and meeting minutes she hadn't seen before. One reimbursement stood out, $3,800 for HOA public relations consulting. J. Crowley, Judith, had paid herself. Mariah's hands trembled slightly as she flipped through the pages. A second charge caught her eye. $1,200 for community beautification, event coordination. But there had been no event, no signs, no budget announcement, just another payout. The next morning, she called her contact at the county's regulatory office. Ethan Keller. "I think there's misuse of funds," she said flatly. "I'll escalate it," he replied. "But tread carefully. These things have a way of getting messy." Messy didn't begin to describe what came next. On Saturday morning, someone slashed Mariah's tires. She found the gashes when she stepped out to pick up groceries. No note, no witnesses. The security camera footage wiped. A power outage, conveniently timed. Clayton's face was pale as he stood next to her, fists clenched. "That's enough," he said. "We have to hit back." Mariah placed a hand on his shoulder. "No, we don't stoop. We shine a light." She filed a police report. Then she called a town hall. Using the HOA bylaws, Mariah and a few neighbors petitioned for a special meeting of members demanding a vote of no confidence against Judith. It required 25% of homeowners to sign on. She got 41% in 3 days. Judith wasn't oblivious. In fact, she showed up to the next HOA newsletter in full force. The subject line, "Defending Our Community." From division, it accused certain residents of undermining the peace and harassing board members with frivolous claims. Mariah printed the email and stapled it to her folder, labeled evidence. What Judith didn't know was that Clayton had been documenting everything. Every violation, every charge, every digital receipt. He'd even built a private forum for neighbors to share their experiences, photos, statements, videos. Within a week, over 80% of Savannah Pines residents were members. And that's when the stories came pouring in. Mr. Darnell, a veteran, was fined for using his garage gym during quiet hours. Mrs. Lang, a cancer survivor, had her solar garden lights removed without notice. The Parkers were fined for excessive child noise during a family BBQ. Each story fueled the fire. But perhaps the biggest bombshell came from an unexpected place. A woman named Veronica Odell, Judith's former assistant, sent Mariah a DM on Clayton's forum. "I have copies of the original budgets and meeting notes. She altered them before submitting to the board. I quit because I couldn't keep quiet. Meet me." They met in a diner on the edge of town. Veronica slid a flash drive across the table. "She's been funneling money to her own consulting firm," she whispered. "The name's different, but the tax ID matches." "Why now?" Mariah asked. "Because she doesn't just find people, she destroys them. She fired my sister from her job at the school after a petty HOA dispute. I was scared, but you're not backing down." Mariah nodded, her voice low. "We're done being quiet." That night, as Clayton uploaded the files to their secure server, the two of them sat side by side in the glow of the monitor. "This is gonna get ugly," he said. "I know," Mariah replied. "But it's worth it because they weren't just fighting back. They were building a case." It all came to a head on a crisp Tuesday evening. The community center parking lot was full 30 minutes before the special HOA meeting even began. People arrived in droves, not just with folding chairs and clipboards, but with purpose. Retirees, young families, couples who had stayed silent for years. All now side by side, waiting for their voices to finally matter. Mariah stood near the front steps in a navy blazer, her folder of evidence clutched tightly in hand. Clayton hovered nearby, camera gear in tow, capturing everything. Judith arrived last. She stepped out of a spotless luxury SUV, heels clicking on the pavement, wearing a red power suit like armor. But there was no smug wave this time. She saw the crowd and froze. Just a second too long. Long enough for the cameras to catch it. Long enough for everyone to notice. Inside the meeting room, the energy was electric. Judith opened the session as required by protocol, but her voice cracked on the first line. I call this special meeting to order," she said, attempting to project confidence. "The purpose of this gathering is to address baseless accusations and resolve community tension." She gestured to the board members seated behind her. None of them met her eyes. Before she could continue, Mr. Darnell stood up. "Point of order," he said loudly. Judith tried to wave it off, but Veronica Odell, who had bravely come forward and was now seated near the front, rose with him. "Per Section 6.4 of the Savannah Pines HOA bylaws, this meeting is under the authority of the residents who filed the petition, not the current board." Cheers erupted. Judith blinked. That's not how this works." "Oh, but it is," said Mr. Gonzalez, the retired attorney from Lot 14 who had reviewed the legal request. He stood holding a printed copy of the bylaws. "Tonight's meeting belongs to the homeowners. You are required to yield the floor." Judith's mask cracked. "This is a witch hunt," she spat. "I have spent years holding this neighborhood together, and now you're throwing it away on lies and Facebook gossip." Mariah calmly walked to the front. "No, Judith," she said into the microphone. "We're here because of the truth." She opened her folder and held up a sheet of paper. "This is a reimbursement request for $3,800 submitted by you under the name J. Crowley Consulting. Here," she tapped another paper, "is a tax ID registration showing that business is owned by you." Gasps filled the room. Mariah continued, "This is an expense report for a landscaping contract with Martina Services, billed at premium rates. But the state licensing database shows no such business exists, and the only Martina in Savannah Pines is your niece." Judith's jaw tightened. Clayton connected his laptop to the projector. One by one, documents appeared falsified. Meeting minutes, photos of removed decorations, violation statistics showing blatant bias against certain streets, and a spreadsheet comparing the official fine totals against what had actually been paid. And then came the video. A clip from the doorbell camera showing Judith uprooting plants in the Reynolds' front yard at 2:17 a.m., then pinning a fresh fine to the door. "I was under stress," Judith mumbled as whispers swelled. "You people have no idea what it's like to run a community. I did what I had to do." "No," Mariah said softly. "You did what served you." Veronica stepped forward. "And I let it happen for too long. But I won't anymore." The room fell silent as Mr. Gonzalez took the mic. "I hereby motion for an immediate vote of no confidence in Judith Mason as HOA President, and a vote to remove the current board under emergency provisions." Seconded unanimous. The ballots were distributed and counted within 15 minutes. Out of 126 eligible homeowners in favor of removal, the rest abstained. Not a single vote opposed. Judith stood stunned. Her red suit looked suddenly too bright under the fluorescent lights. "You'll regret this," she whispered. Mariah stepped forward. "No, we'll rebuild from this." As Judith turned to leave, she passed Diana, her own daughter, seated in the back row. Diana didn't rise. She didn't wave. She simply looked away. And that was the end of Judith's reign. But the story wasn't over, because the next morning, county auditors arrived. The bank's fraud investigation, bolstered by the residents' evidence, had unearthed a web of financial misconduct across 3 other HOAs in the region, each with Judith's fingerprints. Contractors were being interviewed. Funds were frozen. Lawsuits loomed. Savannah Pines held its first open election in years that weekend. Mariah declined to run for any position. She simply wanted her peace. Instead, she nominated Mr. Jackson and Veronica to co-chair the new board. They won by overwhelming support. Later that night, as the sun dipped behind the pine trees, neighbors gathered for a spontaneous block party. No permits, no fines, just music, kids laughing, potluck trays, and relief in the air. Clayton handed his mom a lemonade and nudged her gently. "You did it." Mariah smiled. "No, we did. Because justice wasn't about revenge. It was about restoring a place where people looked out for each other and where no one, not even a president in a red power suit, was above the rules."